Nigga wanna see me fall. I've been focused on the door.
So I'm just going to go through the lighting process with a shoe. The main reason is because shoe advertisements are really popular at the moment, and also I just quite like the shape of it and how it works with the lighting. So yeah, first thing you need to do is work out where your light source is going to be. For this one, I'm just going to have it in the back, behind the shoe, sort of top left, like there. That should be good. You don't have to brush it or anything, you just have to know where it's coming from. So I'm going to keep it there, just at a low opacity like that for now. But yeah, now you know where the light source is, you can actually apply the lights on properly. I'm actually going to place this in a better position because I don't like it just straight on. So yeah, I'll have it like this, and then the light source will be sort of up here. Yeah, that should be good. So yeah, the next step, this is just something I do. This goes for the whole process really. This is all how I do it. There's definitely different ways to do it. So yeah, this step is to paint over the layer with a black brush and clip it to the layer, just by holding Alt in between the two layers and clipping it, and then lowering the opacity, just so it looks like it's a bit darker. The reason I've gone with a black background is just so it's easier to tell the difference between the lights and darks. So yeah, that's the first thing I like to do, just make everything darker because it's in a dark room, and then I can apply the lighting on top of that. So next step is to get a general gradient between the lights and darks. So if the light is coming from the top left of the shoe, pretty obvious, but this edge is going to be light and this edge over here is going to be dark. So I usually start with the darks first, but it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to clip another layer to the shoe, and then with a black brush, this time having it soft like this, I'm going to brush sort of this edge of the shoe where no light is hitting. Now at the moment it's very strong, you can't even see the orange bit anymore, so of course lower the opacity and like that. And then on the other side where the light's coming from, there's different ways to do this. I'm just going to go through the main ones. The first one is with a white brush, obviously the opposite of this side, just brushing where the light's coming from, but then without keeping it like that because that looks really bad. You change the layer mode to overlay, and it's really subtle at the moment, but as you can see it does make a difference, more on the lighter parts than the darker parts. But if that doesn't work for you, the other option is to add some curves, the curve adjustments. Clip that to the layer and bump up the brights like this, and usually I like to bring the darks a little bit down like this, just so. And something like that. And because we have a layer mask on this curve, so we can actually brush away where we don't want the curves to affect, so we just keep it at that edge for now. And as you can see, that looks a lot better, I think, than the white brush with overlay. You can see before and after. One thing I will mention is that I haven't gone through this beforehand. This is more of a video where I'm going through the process myself and just explaining what I'm doing. But now we've got a simple light here and dark here. The next step is to focus more on the edges, like the very edges of the shoe like this. So whereas we had a big black brush going over here, we add another black brush on the top, a lot smaller, about that, and just go over the edges like this, just to create some sort of depth to the edges like this. You can see it's really subtle when you look at it like this, but when you do before and after, it makes a lot of difference to like how the shoe works in 3 dimensions. Whereas before it looked sort of without any corrections, it just looks like an image placed onto the background. Whereas with this shadow, it sort of looks part of the image more, if that makes any sense at all. So yeah, one thing I'm gonna do, there's no limit to how many shadows and lights you place on it. It's just about getting that realism really. This little crease in the shoe here, I'm gonna add some shadows there, like that. And probably more over here, and then lower the opacity to about there. But yeah, that looks good to me. Now with the light side, pretty much do the same thing. I'm going to add some more curves, because with lighting, especially with white light, I like to use curves out of everything. So there we go. What I did there is I just pressed Control I to invert the mask. When you're selected on mask and you press Control I, it inverts all the whites to blacks and all the blacks to whites. So now nothing is selected with the curves, and then you can just brush over with a white brush and select what the curves affect. So now instead of brushing sort of with a big brush over everything, I'm just going to go more to the edges like this and sort of brush closer to the edge with a smaller brush, just like we did with the shadows on the other side. I'm probably going to make these stronger as well, just so it's more obvious that there's a light glow there. Now you can see before and after, it makes a lot of difference just with the highlights. And one more thing, this area here is a bit too light as compared to everything else on this side, so I'm just going to brush away this area here, because this bit's already light, so adding curves to it will just make it brighter. And there you go, that's the main process of lighting. The next thing is to keep in mind these little areas here. These areas here are also, if the light's coming from here, the light's going to be cast onto this edge here, and especially this edge here, and probably a bit through this hole as well. So there's a lot of, depending on how complex your object is, there's a lot to think about where the light's coming from and where it hits and all that. So to do this, I like to select the areas where the light's going to be cast. So it's going to be cast here. So yeah, I've just pen tooled around where I want the light to cast on, and then I'm going to right click and make selection while in the pen tool I guess. And then now it's all just brushing where the light's going to be hit from. Probably a bit smaller than that. So like that. And then also on this one as well. Just to save time, I'm going to keep the selection. I'll just undid there. Keep the selection like this and press Control Shift I to invert the selection. Now if I brush anything on, I'm going to add a new layer just so I can keep everything organised. Now if I brush anything on, it's going to do the outside of this selection. As you can see, it will go everywhere but inside the selection. So yeah, I'm just going to brush over here like that, and then rub this out because I didn't want to do that. Now we've added the brushes, I'm just going to go ahead and add the curves and use these selections that we made with the brushes as the mask. So to do that, I'm just going to press Control I again to make the mask black, and then I'm going to hold Control and click this preview box here, and you'll see this box come up. That basically selects what's on this layer as a selection, and then I'm going to hold Control again like this and press Shift, and that will add this selection as well as the selection you've already selected, like that. And now we've got this whole glow here selected, we can press Control I again while selected on this layer mask, and then hide these. Now basically what that's done is this mask is now black except for these areas here, I guess. So as you can see, if I bump up the curves a lot, it will just affect where them brushes were placed. A lot of it's playing around with your object just to make it more realistic. Obviously I like to go quick just because I don't like, you know, making it so that you can copy everything that I'm doing. It's more applying the skills that I'm using to something else. So now that's before and that's after. That's probably a bit strong, so I'm just going to lower the opacity. So there you go, there's the lighting on these sides here as well. I'm just going to delete these layers because we don't need them anymore. And now the last bit, maybe the last bit, maybe not. The last step of the lighting is to get a really thin edge going across here of where the light's being hit from. But the way I like to do this is to control and click the preview of the shoe layer like this, just to select the outline of the shoe, make a new layer and fill it with any colour like this. I'm just going to fill it with black for now, and then go to this fill option here and turn it all the way down. The difference between the opacity and fill here is that if I turn the fill all the way down and add some layer styles onto it, for example, let's do inner glow because that's what we're going to use anyway. As you can see, the layer styles are still visible, but the object itself isn't. So if I turn the fill to 50%, the black will become 50%, but the layer styles all still stay the same. If I turn the opacity down, it turns both of them down simultaneously. By turning the fill all the way down and then applying some layer styles, it will only show the layer styles and not the black outline. So anyway, with this inner glow, I'm going to change it to overlay. I'll put the opacity to 100 and set it to white. And I'm also going to put the choke up a little bit and the size down. Main thing I'm focusing on is how it looks across this edge, because we're not going to have it affecting all these edges and that. So I'm just going to do that. So yeah, just make sure with white lighting like this, it's on overlay and it's on 100%. We can, if it looks too strong, we can change it afterward. But yeah, then click OK, and then you can right click on this inner glow effect here. If you can't see it, it's probably this drop down here, so just press that, right click and create layer, and that will create a separate layer to the shoe where the inner glow is. So you can turn that off and on like this. Now with this separate layer, you can add a layer mask to the inner glow. So again, I'm going to make a layer mask on this and press Control I to invert it, and then just select the areas where I want the inner glow to be, like that. So now you can see before and after, I think that looks a lot better. So I think now this light inside looks pretty good. Of course, you can spend more time on making it perfect if you really want, but I'm just going over the main process. But yeah, next step, just going to go over a few corrections on the rest of the shoe. This shadow side looks good. However, this orange bit here is sort of a main aspect of the shoe. It's sort of, you know, what your eye goes to first. So I'm just going to add some more curves and apply it to the orange bit, just so you can see it. And there you go. And I'm also going to add some more shadows to this newly lit orange bit. Another thing, when applying shadows to a colour like this, instead of just adding the black brush and lowering the opacity, if you change the layer mode, the blended mode, sorry, to soft light, it will make a sort of a darker version of the colour it's applied to. So you can see with normal, it looks like black that's laid on top of orange, and with soft light, it's black, which then goes into a darker orange, which then goes into the main colour. So I think soft light is really good to use when applying shadows to colours. So now I'm going to get into more complex lighting sources with different colours and different places. So to keep it simple, I'm going to use this orange bit as a lighting source here, just because I think that might look quite good. So yeah, with this as the lighting source, we want to think about the sort of same as this lighting source here, where the light's going to be cast and what it's going to affect the surroundings. This makes no sense, but I'm just going to go for it. So yeah, the main thing I like to do with coloured light, like I'm going to do this orange bit here. This is going to be really subtle, but I'm just going to add some colour balance and set it to an orange, so mixture between red and yellow, like this. And then invert the mask so nothing's selected, and then just literally paint a white brush on top of the orange bit. And probably brush some more down here and up here. Not going to get it perfect, but there you go. And then I'm going to rub out where the orange is, just because I think it's a bit strong where the orange is. So you can see, while thinking about the lighting, it makes it look a lot better. So this is before, and if we consider this as a light source, this is after. There's some light being cast onto this top part of the shoe and down here, and it's also orange light, so that's where the colour balance comes in. You can also use an orange brush by selecting a colour here. I see this done quite a lot, just making the orange similar colour, and then doing this and then pressing screen. I see that done a lot, but as you can see, it looks really cheap. And even if you lower the opacity and map it to the shoe, yeah, I think it's a lot better to do colour balance, just because it edits the colours themselves instead of adds new ones on top of them. And now it's the same thing with this really. I'm just going to change this light source back here to an orange one. I'm just going to place orange, probably going to put it underneath the white and make the white overlay, just so it sort of looks like a glowy orange like this. You don't really need to change much with all this all this light in here. The only thing you need to change is the colour of it, because we've already made it brighter, but now it's an orange light. We need to add some more orange into it. So again, I'm going to add some colour balance to it. I forgot to add this colour balance to the shoe. So yeah, add some more colour balance. So yeah, make it orange again, and invert the mask, and just brush over where the light's coming from. So it'll be this end here. So yeah, it should be more subtle because it's sort of coming from the back, so it won't be as strong on this as this orange here. So I'm just going to lower the opacity so it's not as strong. And there you go, there's after, before, after. So you can definitely tell there's some orange light hitting this area here, just because of the colour balance. But I've just made it weaker because I don't want it to be as strong as this area here. So now I'd say the last step with the coloured light is to do the same thing we did with the inner glow here. So I'm just going to select this outline of the shoe, make a new layer, make it black. I'm just going to go quicker because I've already been through this. Set the fill to 0. So now with coloured glows, with the inner glow, instead of changing it to overlay, you want to keep it as screen. And then I'm also going to change this to orange. Set the size up. So yeah, change it to screen, and I'm just sort of going for an outline, a thin outline on this edge here. Create layer. Add a black mask to it and brush over where the light's coming from. So this screen inner glow sort of thing, I think it looks cheap at the moment. In the same way that when you make a brush on top of this and set it to screen, it looks really cheap. By cheap I mean it doesn't look realistic, it just means like you've added a brush onto it almost. But yeah, instead I'm going to use curves, but instead of adding brightness to it, I'm going to change this RGB to red and up the red. So yeah, I've sort of played around with the curves. I've gone for reds, up in the brightness a lot, and the blues just lowering the mid-tone blues a little bit, just so it gives a more yellow tint. And then again, Control I on the curves and paint over where the light's coming from. Also, I have to clip all these layers to the shoe. So now hopefully you can see how the difference between this screen in a glow looks and how these curves look. So now, as some final colour corrections on the top, this isn't really anything to do with the lighting, this is just something I like to do to make sure it's all put together well, I don't know, is add some final curves, making the brights a little bit brighter and pushing darks down a little bit, and adding some colour balance on top of everything. So yeah, I've just added a subtle CC here with curves and colour balance, just curves to increase the contrast and colour balance just to, I don't know, sort out the colours a little bit more. Now if we remove this light here and add our own lights onto it, you can see it looks kind of strong without the lights in place, but we'll add an orange glow behind the shoe, sort of in a similar direction where the light's coming from, and then a white one on top, smaller, set it to overlay, and then make them both less visible. So now there you have your lit shoe. It looks pretty cool. This is after all the corrections obviously, and this is before. So yeah, you can see how flat and, you know, boring it looks before everything we've put on, and then after it looks a lot better. So this is quite a lot of corrections to go through, but I hope this did help get into grips with lighting in Photoshop. If you have any questions, because I did go really fast in this, then feel free to ask them in the comments and then I'll get to them ASAP. And yeah, that's all. Peace.